What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to another Heart Over Height episode. Today we're going to be continuing the new YouTube series that I started. It is the Hype Breakdown series, and that is where we spin this wheel here, and then the episode is dedicated to whatever team lands on the wheel. For instance, episode 1, if you did not see that one, we spun the wheel and we landed on the Atlanta Hawks. So we broke down the roster, talked about how well they could perform, what the ceiling is, as well as what the floor looks like for them, and just everything in between, discussing what moves they need to make and where I personally believe they could fall realistically in this upcoming season. So if you do enjoy this content, do me a huge favor, smash the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, comment down below what team you want to see next. And then, without further ado, let's get right on into this. So, we're just going to spin this wheel. It has 29 teams on it, as I've taken out the Atlanta Hawks. So, let's just spin this wheel and see what we're going with. The Atlanta Hawks episode did really well, and we're going to get an exciting one. It is the San Antonio Spurs. So, the San Antonio Spurs, of course, are a young, exciting roster. But let me go grab their depth chart and everything. I'll be right back. All right, so I do have the San Antonio Spurs depth chart here. Before we break down this depth chart, I do want to look at a couple things. So we're just going to break down what they did last year. Now, of course, it wasn't anything too exciting. The only team in the West that they were better than was the Portland Trail Blazers, which obviously they weren't going to be a good squad either. Now, these two teams, as well as the Washington Wizards, Detroit Pistons, and Hornets, definitely had very poor seasons. Nothing too exciting about, except for the Spurs with Victor Wembanyama. Now, we know Wembanyama is going to be a legit certified star in this league. How far he can take that, we won't know exactly until a few years from now. But what I will say is I looked up the Vegas odds. The Vegas odds have Victor Wembanyama for this next Defensive Player of the Year award, it being him. This is pretty much all across the board from a lot of FanDuel, Prize Picks, DraftKings, all those. It is saying Victor Wembanyama will be winning the Defensive Player of the Year most likely, and it's by a pretty wide margin, I would say. Yeah, looking at the team standing, though, last year, there just wasn't too much exciting things. Now, what I will say is they picked it up in the sense of they went to their depth chart and they were trying this experiment of having Jeremy Sohan play the point guard for them, which just wasn't working. It was terrible. For some reason, he wasn't getting Vic the ball. Then they brought in Trey Jones to play the point guard. They had him play point, and that's where things started to there was a little bit of a bright side there. It was working. Trey was able to he's just like his brother Tyus, where they're able to play make a lot. They're not going to be top scorers or anything like that, but they're going to be nice playmakers for the roster. There are some exciting pieces on this roster, of course, besides Victor Wembanyama, right? Vic is, of course, we all know he's the exciting piece here. He's going to be the future. He's going to be the next big, great San Antonio Spur, joining Tim Duncan, David Robinson, we assume. Of course, there's some injury concerns with Vic, but specifically, let's talk about other players. Devin Vassell is someone who has kind of flown under the radar thus far in his career, but he's a solid spark plug kind of player. He can score the ball pretty efficiently. Another guy who just hasn't performed to the hype is Keldon Johnson. Keldon Johnson, I think he'll be a valuable trade piece this year, come close to the trade deadline. I think that you'll see very quickly in this season, if they get off to a hot start, they're going to be active on the trade market, especially near the trade deadline, if they can, because they don't want to waste time with Victor Wembanyama. That's why they went and signed Chris Paul. That's why they were comfortable with bringing in Harrison Barnes off the DeMar DeRozan deal. You know, just bringing in vets to really help out. Now, is this a championship contending roster today? Absolutely not. I don't believe so. Around the trade deadline, that could change because you do have valuable pieces. Harrison Barnes being someone that a lot of championship contending teams might be looking for some depth at the forward position, so they might go out and trade for him. Keldon Johnson is another guy that valuable piece, valuable asset. I don't think that they're going to end up trading Chris Paul. Jeremy Sohan is just someone I personally think that the Spurs should just get rid of, move on from him. I don't think he's really fit with the roster construction and everything. Devin Vassell could be an interesting piece also as Stephon Castle has continued to develop. So then you kind of let him take the reins. But I hope that they keep a core of Vic, Devin Vassell, and Stephon Castle at least. Using Keldon Johnson, Zach Collins, Harrison Barnes, Trey Jones even if needed to just go explore options in the trade deadline and then in the offseason as well. There were 3 teams that were close in making a Lauri Markkanen trade, and it was the Warriors, it was the Kings, and last but not least, the Spurs. And the Spurs would have been an interesting one because I've touched on this a few times here in the sense of Lauri Markkanen pairing a unicorn with another unicorn. So when you do that, you create this interesting, unique transition that we've never seen in the league. We don't see 7-footers who can spread the floor, block shots, like handle the rock. It's something that the NBA's never seen before. So, it's almost like when you see those little glimpses of JaVale McGee when he pops off with a little quick dribble move every once in a while, or Pau Gasol when he was in the league doing the same thing every once in a while. There's highlight videos of those. It's like that, but it'll happen all the time. So there's scary opportunity for the Spurs to jump up. But let's take a look at the standings here and predict where they're going to fall. Now, in a previous video, I dropped, before breaking down the roster, I dropped an NBA tier list stating like whether they're championship contending, what they are, blah, 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 what are they doing, go on and so forth. And then at the bottom, I put tank for Cooper Flag, right? And the Spurs I had put into that category. Now I'm kind of second guessing myself and thinking the Spurs can be a little better than that and fight for a play-in, but still be around that Cooper Flag area. Because you look at, I think that obviously Utah I think will be worse. I think Memphis will be better. I think Golden State might be a little worse. I'm not a huge fan of the whole DeMar DeRozan signing, but I still think they'll be somewhat decent and competitive. So San Antonio might be creeping around this 11 area, which could put them in that play-in spot, and then they just win a couple games, and they're in the playoffs. And then especially around the trade deadline, I think that if you're around that 11 spot, you might end up going for it and being like, hey, like Chris Paul has proven in the past that he can be legit on a young and upcoming team. And what I mean by that is when he was on the Thunder and Shea was just up and coming and, all that, he's now on the Spurs and he has the opportunity to do the same thing. I think that there's no better opportunity than getting Vic as much playoff experience as you can as early as you can. Like the Celtics, for example. Jason Tatum's like repertoire of his like career has been playoffs. And yes, he only has the one championship now, but the experience is what helped him. The going out and facing LeBron when he was in Cleveland in a game 5, or going out and losing to the Warriors in the finals helped him a lot develop. So it alleviates the pressure when you do go to the finals. And I think that's what Vic needs too, is let's get this guy to the playoffs as quickly as we can. Let's make sure he's healthy as much as we can. So that means we're going to need depth and superstar talent on this roster. And if we truly believe Vic is the next guy, which we think he is, we really think that he is one of those next faces of the league, similar to like Luka Doncic. We're just, what is this guy's ceiling? Because we don't know. We've never seen a player like him. So I think what you do, if you're the Spurs, I think you be extremely active on the trade deadline area, and you go and you look at those rosters that are just looking to kind of give away players. You just see like what the Hawks are doing about Trae Young, because he would be a great fit along Vic. Or you look and seeing like what are the Knicks doing about Julius Randle possibly, and if you can get him for cheap. Now, do I love the fit there? Maybe not, but I'm just saying like those are just examples of name players that you can bring, because right now this roster outside of Vic just needs, and I guess Stephon Castle because he's your number 4 overall draft pick, just needs depth. One thing I will say about this roster that I didn't necessarily love was on draft night, they had the opportunity to draft Rob Dillingham, and they traded him away. I was a huge fan of the idea of Vic, Rob Dillingham, and Stephon Castle. Just the three of them, young, developing together. Stephon Castle being this dynamic defending guard. You had Rob Dillingham, who he has the expectation of coming in and going up to being as great as like Allen Iverson with the shiftiness that he provides to this game. Victor Wembanyama being something we've never seen before. I would have been intrigued to see that. Now, of course, we didn't see that. And they have another guard in Chris Paul and Trey Jones off the bench. And I think that they're just focusing on let's develop Stephon Castle and just see kind of what this roster can do. Let's see the next step in Victor Wembanyama. Will he win Defensive Player of the Year? But overall, as I take a stand here, I think that San Antonio is going to finish around the 11th seed. I think Golden State's going to drop. I think Sacramento could drop. But then you have like Portland. You have Utah. I think you have Golden State down at the bottom. And then who knows about the Clippers? The Clippers are a huge question mark also. They might be terrible, especially if Kawhi gets injured or James Harden gets injured. So that being said, if they're around the 11th seed, you got to send it. You got to trade deadline, make a couple moves, boom. If they're around the 11th seed, around the trade deadline, meaning that halfway point through the season, because look at what it did for the Pacers. They went and acquired Pascal Siakam. They had Tyrese Halliburton. They had other Miles Turner and Obi Toppin and all these other pieces. They just needed another star. And that's exactly what the San Antonio Spurs roster is screaming for, is just another star. So you just look, who's disgruntled? Is it Trae Young with the Hawks because he's just not happy anymore with another mediocre season from the Hawks players around him? Is it someone like Julius Randle who just doesn't fit in with the Knicks? So you guys let me know what you think in the comments down below. But again, this has been episode 2 of Hype Breakdown. And this was the San Antonio Spurs. Of course, we're going to be excited to continue to do this series. If you guys do enjoy this, let me know what you think in the comments. And again, it's been another Heart Over Height episode, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.